Welcome and good afternoon to all the participants. And it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon along with a very powerful and experienced panel of general counsels. And fortunately, my panel is all powerful ladies in the legal circle. So I'm looking forward for a very, very interesting discussion here. And in terms of a very interesting topic, right? So just to set the context for what we are going to discuss in the next 1 hour, I think you already heard the Honorable Minister and speak about what the IT industry is all about and how they are facilitating as making it the next big thing or the bottlenecks or clearing the bottlenecks for the IT players. And it is, I think, quite a known fact that India is the world's largest sourcing destination with largest qualified talent pool of technical graduates in the world. And according to NASSCOM, the Indian IT industry revenue is estimated to reach almost $194 billion in FY21, an increase of 2.3% year on year. So, and the sector is the largest employer within the private sector. And according to Gartner estimates, IT spending in India is estimated to reach about US 93 billion in 2021, which is again a increase of 7.3 in spite of the challenging circumstances of COVID and the unique times that we are all living in, which is, and the COVID pandemic has only accelerated the demand for third-party data center services in India. And I think all the IT companies are showing very positive results as well. The push towards cloud services has boosted hyperscale data center investments across global investments, and they're estimated to exceed almost 200 billion annually by 2025, right? Those are big numbers, right? And this has been recently released by the government of India. So I thought I will share with you because some of these numbers are as new as 2021 and they are making projections for next 5 years, which will give you just a glimpse of what the potential of the industry is and the activity and the growth that this sector is going to see in the coming few years. And obviously with that, India is expected to gain a significant share in the global markets, and the country's investments are expected to hit a 5 billion by 2025. And the government is not oblivious to this growth. I think in budget of 2021, the government has allocated almost 53,000 crores into the IT and telecom sector, and IT accounted for 8% of India's GDP in 2020, right? That's no small figure. And the exports of Indian IT industries are also expected to increase, right? They will kind of touch 150 billion in 2021. And that's the figures coming from STPI and other agencies. That is also an increasing trend there. And of course, this is all backed by rapid digitization and the IT industry's timely transition to remote working environments because of COVID. That has helped the country to keep up the industry's growth amid coronavirus pandemic. So no mean task. I think the IT companies have shown their mettle in the face of adversity and shown what they can achieve and make influence on the Indian environment, right? And they're a major source of IT services across the world. But today, this panel is not discussing about the good things about IT, right? I think it's a challenge for me to kind of do the dark side of IT, and I think therefore but the reality is that there are some major challenges being faced by the IT industry in India as well, which is and these challenges are becoming barriers of growth for leading IT companies in the country, right? And today's session we'll be discussing all the challenges faced by the industry, and basically our discussions are going to be bucketed into three channels. The first is the devil's side of the IT rules and its impact on business scenario. The second is the challenges for the IT service provider, and we'll focus specifically on the compliance challenges that are there and the regulation challenges. And the last is the whole area of cyber crimes and cyber security. So just to set the context, and before we get into and deep dive into each of these channels, I would request my panelists to kind of just give their opening remarks for a couple of minutes in terms of what do they think with respect to the topic and in general, because all of you come from leading IT companies across the country. Over to you, Sanjukta, if you want to start.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Anubhav, and thank you, Legal Era, for this opportunity, and very glad to be a part of this panel amongst all of you. Essentially, I think what you said, Anubhav, in terms of the growth, the challenges that we've already faced in the last about year and a half during the pandemic, I think all of us know it. We have overcome a lot of challenges, but that doesn't mean that there haven't been lessons learned. I think all of us will have a number of we can write books, I suppose. We need to toy about how did we meet this challenge or that, and then because it's easily forgotten. So in fact, I'm thinking that I should document only for my own self some of the issues that we faced. What did we do? And then how did we overcome those things? But today, as far as my topic is concerned, I'd like to talk about an area which sometimes we overlook when we see challenges, because we have claims from clients, insurance, data privacy. There's a lot of focus today on GDPR, at least if not today, for the last couple of years. There's a lot of focus on GDPR, but I'd like to present a case study in relation to the Singapore PDPA, and somehow talk and also interweave the insurance angle into your claims, and what do we need to do, some key takeaways which I believe should be useful for the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjukta. I think that would be very interesting and enlightening. Over to you, Meenu, for your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to the Legal Era organization. We've had a long association, and thank you so much for inviting me here. I think this is a very good reflective time while we are done with the second wave. Hopefully no waves coming in, but keeping our fingers crossed and bracing ourselves. I feel this is a very important time for us to reflect, not as humanity, but also the industry panel that we're talking about from an IT perspective. And as Sanjukta said that, there's been so many learnings and, what we have gone through. When I take a step back, I think what I would like to focus on and this is probably because of my previous experience on cybersecurity and privacy, how new challenges from a point of view of employee privacy came along, the whole rapid transformation, which was very, I would say, very fast, too fast sometimes because of the pandemic. There were a lot of compromises that had to be made on security and privacy in order to ramp up quickly and then to look at it later post facto. So all those things really need to be thought through in this next phase, which I think the IT industry is getting into, where it has leapfrogged digital transformation that it was already looking to do and enabling the rest of the sectors to become more IT ingrained. And as a result, what is it that they need to now look at from a point of view of stabilization and a better way of progression from the numbers that you just talked about? So I like to focus on that aspect when we get to the specific questions.
Thank you, Meenu. Shalini, over to you.
Well, thanks, Anubhav. And I think Sanjukta and Meenu said a lot about how the pandemic has helped us get to where we are. I'm going to look at the dark side of IT and hopefully also show you the silver lining there is. I was reading an article somewhere which said that, India is pegged against countries which are learning how to go digital. And pandemic actually was a great event. Sorry to say that, but it was a great event in accelerating what was going to come any which ways. So what I would like to bring to the table, and I'm hoping in a country like ours, discussion is going to help set the path for great legislations and great work to come together. And all of us are definitely going to benefit. I mean, there's nobody losing on this table. All of us are only going to get off it smarter and more tech savvy.
That's really exciting, Shalini, and I'm looking forward for hearing your point of view. Obviously, people tend to go towards the criticism faster than the good part about thing, and I think IT has a lot of good because Indian IT companies have really competed at a global level, and now they have their delivery centers all across the world and presence all across the world, right? Which is commendable. And I think Indian IT professionals are also very well respected across the world, right? So without much ado, let me dive deep into the channels then. I think my first question is directed to Meenu, since you spoke about regulations and IT rules. What do you think, Meenu, are the existing legal and regulatory challenges or among the IT rules, and is the existing framework adequate? Do you see a gap in the existing framework, and if any, and then what do you think will make the Indian IT more competitive, given that those gaps are filled in?
Thank you, Anubhav. So if we look at the history, and I wouldn't go into the details because we're all lawyers here, I'm sure we are sort of more or less well-versed with the nitty-gritties of the IT-related laws. But if we look at it, we have always, as a country, risen up to the challenge of new laws needed. And that is really reflected in the fact that we were very early in the game when we decided to have an IT Act, which was a good thing. Now, of course, we came in too early without having too much knowledge. So I guess we were just playing along with other regimes which were already more mature than us on the IT front. And hence we see that we have legislation which was very early in, but still not mature in its way of framing. The legislation needed more clarity. And then we started building pieces onto it. And if you look at it, we tried to bring a comprehensive regime from various places. So we have the IT Act, Section 43, which talks about the security aspect. Then we have the SPDI rules, which are looking at how sensitive data needs to be secured. Then we look at how new standards were made, not mandatory, but were sort of brought in saying, you have the IEC 27001 standard, which was seen as a good standard to demonstrate to a regulator that you have done a good job in bringing due diligence to your cybersecurity. So there was a lot of good effort there. And then, we saw more lately in 2021 about the other pieces which were around the intermediary guidelines. And I think one of my co-panelists will probably touch upon how that's going to be a pain as well. But what I feel is that the fact that they are not coming together and they have come at different times, the pieces don't quite fit even now. And yes, we all heard from Mr. Anubhav Kapoor, Anubhav Garg as well, that we need the data protection bill as well, which is a very fundamental part to privacy and security. For me, privacy and security are like the two sides of the same coin. You can't have one and not the other. Because if your data is not secure, privacy is never going to be upheld. So in that sense, I wouldn't say there's a gap. There's a lot of good pieces that have come together over a period of time. However, the challenge is to how to seamlessly bring it together. And when I look at, and there was an article which I was reading also very recently, which talked about the Jagat Singh judgment, which is now saying that hacking is not only an offense under the IT Act, but also a misappropriation under the IPC. While IPC still needs to be, reformed and brought to the new era that we live in, I still agree that yes, it is a misappropriation, and bringing those principles in was a good thing from a point of view of being able to adjudicate on an offense, which was very grave, hacking. But I think it's going to again make people confused in terms of how they will bring it to the court, how the courts will deal with this interpretation, and what will happen with the resultant penalty and offenses. There are so many good penalties that have come in, but if you look at it, RBI also has now made it very cumbersome, which is right, that the moment there is a breach in the bank, there should be within 2 to 6 hours be a notification to the RBI. But what next? Is it only about notification? And maybe we can talk in the next phase where we talk about compliances. What is the point of just a notification? What are you going to do about it? So yes, it's good to have these rules and these new mandates coming in from various sectoral regulators and all the pieces that have come together. But we need to now sit back and bring them all together in a framework which really works like a cybersecurity policy, which was being talked of, but I don't think it's been revived yet.
Thank you, Meenu. That was a lot of things there, and I think we'll carry the discussion forward as we move into compliances. But your point is well taken that we went through the growth path, and I think what you are indicating is that we have come of age now, and this is a time for having a singular regulatory framework to kind of maybe a nodal agency which can regulate the sector and specifically deal with the problems which are very IT and specific, right? I think that's a great start. And but we keep on coming back to, I think there are areas within and the sector is very large, and there are different kinds of players. There are IT services, there are BPM, there are BPOs, right? And then there are this whole product companies that are there, and social media companies and e-commerce companies. The sector has grown in all directions, and I think there is still a lot of regulation that is still required to regulate many of these new businesses or new commercial areas. And that takes me to the recently announced Intermediary Guidelines, which were kind of launched. And it was a good positive step. It was much needed. But obviously, as soon as they were launched, they had their own share of criticism and pushback from the industry players, especially the social media. So my next question is for Shalini. Shalini, what in your opinion are some of the areas which we could have done better, and which are the pain points in that area? Why are these companies pushing back these regulations while I think the beneficiaries of this sector or people who are using these services are actually saying they are good?
Honestly, when I was talking to a couple of people from these so-called social media companies, they were of the view that all of a sudden our criticism has been blown out and everything else has been put on a backseat. So it's not like they are really criticizing what has happened, because honestly, if you look across the globe, every country has done exactly this. India has not done something that's completely outlandish. Australia, South Korea, Europe, UK, everybody has regulations on monitoring and controlling how media plays out. Our story also seems very good, right? The government is saying it's about pornography, it's about women being objectified, it's about all socially relevant topics. So the story looks good. You're right. there is definitely scope for improvement, like in many things. And I think Meenu made a damn good point. We came very earlier on the scene, but we have never managed to catch up. We have always left these big gaps. Now, whether it's because we did not learn from our Western counterparts fast enough, or the private and public players never really came into a partnership. It's a silo play by the government, and we just have to follow and agree to it. Today, of course, the industry chapters that lobby and they talk to the RBIs and the METIs of the world on how I, as a private player, would like the government to work for me. So there is definitely improvement. Now, when I was reading through the new amendments, I realized that a lot of noise was being pushed into these companies. Compliance on top of compliance, a grievance officer on top of a nodal officer. I mean, it was so layered. It's only going to be administratively a nuisance. I'm not sure what we're going to achieve from it. Then they got around to saying that, we've taken away the originator being traced. So that seems to have gone off. But when I was reading through the regulations, I realized not really. There is still a public nuance that may ask the government to come back and help me trace who the... So just, it's not transparent. I think that's the biggest grouse that most of us have, is that this is not happening in a transparent manner. There are way too many legislations and too many regulators that are interplaying with each other. There is, I think even Meenu made that point, data privacy is very critical. And now they're saying after a user, for example, takes off their account, you're supposed to retain that data for a much enhanced period. Where we don't know data security, where there is very minimal care given to your and my data, why are we holding on to it for an extended period and in the name of what? So there is scope of improvement. Inherently, I feel the amendments are good, needed. The devil is going to be in the detail on how they're going to be implemented and how they're going to be finally worked out in policies of all these social medias. The OTT coming in is a surprise for me. I was pretty taken aback that all of a sudden we needed foreign media houses and OTT content creators to also come in the ambit of this. But I was talking to someone who made a very good point, saying, earlier your adult content was monitored by censor board, and then the Ministry of Information and Broadcast. So what has changed? All they've done is introduce the amendment into the IT Act now. The moral issue always remains the same. We are not ready to see adult content, right? So yeah, a lot of scope there.
Thank you, Shalini. I think all good points, and I think there is some extent of acceptability, and we are at that juncture right now where the technology is entering our lives in a more intrinsic way, right? And probably they are touching the more inner cores of where it makes a difference to our values and how we live and stay, right? And that is where the conflicts are happening. But I think your points are very well made. And I think, so basically the panel kind of agrees that, yes, what we have done is good, but there is still more to be done. And there are more regulations that we need to put in place, but not at the same time over-regulate, right? And I think there is a risk of over-regulation because the regulatory burden on a business has a significant impact on its performance, right? And I think that's one of the grouses the industry has been voicing for quite some time. And to ensure that compliance regulations impose both time and cost and affect competitiveness of the business is another factor which is pulling a lot of the industry down, right? I do see some positives, say, for example, in 2020, as soon as the COVID thing came in, the government released the simplified OSP guidelines to improve the ease of doing business in the IT industry. The BPOs and IT-enabled services greatly benefited out of it, and we were all able to do work from home as well. But on the other hand, I think as the panel is voicing out that data protection bills were tabled in 2009, and despite many incidents happening over a period of time, and they are very well publicized in the media, there has been no urgency to pass the bill. And I'm sure there are other imperatives as well, but I think the country really is looking forward for one, because if we are talking about a data economy, data privacy becomes and data security becomes the prime focus, where we should be kind of not have regulations, right? So I think but on the good side, I think the Indian ranking on the World Bank's doing business report, or the ease of doing business, India has really improved, right? From almost like 142 out of 190 in 2014, we are 63rd, right? Which is like, for the last 3 years, we have been improving, and we are among the top 3 improvers, right? And the ease of doing business is not only focused on reduction in compliance, but also use of technology. And we see that many of our filings in many of the government has improved and become online, which has saved us a lot of waste in terms of both time and resources. And also, Finance Minister this year in March did announce that there are some amendments which are aimed in achieving a reduction in the compliance. And what we hear is that they have identified almost 6,000 compliances, both at the central and the state levels, that would be eased as part of the government's plan to make it easier to do business in India. So I think there is a systematic exercise across center and states in undertaking to eliminate and reduce compliance, which could have an adverse effect on the time and cost of businesses. But at the same time, I don't know how much you are feeling it on the ground, the change, right? And that is probably segueing me into the next layer of the next channel, which we are focusing on compliance in terms of Meenu, what do you see are the major compliance challenges that normally IT companies face? What has been COVID's impact on, say, data privacy, protection, security, data security? Do you have any areas which you think should be immediately addressed to make compliance less burdensome, right? And this is very well, a lot of agencies have been focusing on this area, and this has been discussed quite a bit. But how do you see, since you come from a core IT company and is ingrained into the regulatory setup of HCL?
Thank you, Anubhav. I think this is really important for all in the IT sector, but across as well. If you look at it, compliance is always a challenge. Any compliance leader would say there's too much to do. There's too many compliance papers to file. But I believe in compliance at the core, and as I'm really a compliance champion in this sense. But at the same time, with the pandemic coming in, and you talked about the OSP guidelines really coming in very quickly to help us overcome the issue of whether we can work from home. We had, and I'll just share that experience. Last year, March, I think it was, and March, April, we were all in that state of lockdown and everything. And we had an ECMT immediately. We have around 100,000 employees in India delivering from various locations. And all we were thinking was, they're all at home. How do we make work from home possible? And that's where the compliance kicks in, because even if, and it was great that the OSP guidelines came in later, but we had to go to every location development commissioner, which is the SEZ zone, or the STPI head or the customs officer, and literally had to file volumes of paper regarding each and every hardware piece that had to go out of our facilities in order for our employees to work from home. That was a humongous project for at least 45 days. And it took us more than that to actually get our employees to work from home. So when I look back and reflect, if we were already digitally transformed, or if we had the portals which are now coming in place, learning from that experience, and the compliance would have become more automated, the moving in and out of assets from these kind of economic zones were already in that automated zone, what life would have been. But again, that's where we need to learn from it. And when I look at that, I say, compliance is great. You want to know as a regulator whether an asset which is bonded in a particular economic zone is here or where. Can we make it more automatic or driven through automation in terms of portals? The good thing is the departments have equally learned while we were all learning, and they have, and I'm happy to report that the NSDL portal works much, much better than it used to. My team tells me it's easier to do all the filings now. But still, there is still that requirement. A lot of paper still stays behind. A lot of hard copies, a lot of approvals and signatures are still needed, which means that it's a journey. It's a journey to get there from where we were. And I think it's a good journey. I'm optimistic if we don't need the third wave for us to stay on that journey. I'm optimistic that we will, get there in that sense. So that was one piece. And then with work from home and with the issue of vaccination came a new challenge, which was more about employee data regarding his health, employee consent regarding vaccination, all these privacy issues across the world, because we have around 50, subsidiaries in around 50 countries, and we were grappling, and our data we have a separate team for privacy team and the legal team were grappling in every jurisdiction how to interpret what they can do and what they cannot do. And that's been a big challenge during the pandemic stage. There was one point where we had a question in our head, can we really mandate our employees to take the vaccination, whichever they choose, but can they take it? And obviously, it was not an easy answer. When the government itself hasn't mandated it, how can you mandate it, right? So those were the kind of challenges, and I think privacy will become more and more important, although there is also a thought process, and there was a survey that IIPP did with privacy leaders during this time, where, and I would just refer to that data, the question was being asked as to, are people trusting and giving their information more easily? And because of what? Because of vaccination, or because they want to get into a mall and they have to give their temperature and say that they are free of COVID. Yes, but one of the regulators in Singapore said that right now they were very easily giving away their private data, but they want you to do something about it as well. So, the payback time will come soon when this pandemic is over, and there can be a big, uproar from a consumer perspective, from an employee perspective. What have you done with my data? And the challenge will remain even now. Every time I get into the office, my temperature is recorded. What are we going to do with that data? How are we going to keep it safe? How is it going to be stored? And how long? All those questions are still very much up in the air from where I see it. And that will be a compliance challenge in the long run, because I'm sure we're going to get more and more compliance requirements as COVID progresses or settles down, whichever way it goes.
Thank you, Meenu. I think, what do you think about Arogya Setu? Did you face any issues, or you have mandated that?
No, we, and this is because we are an IT company, right? What we did was, instead of getting into the controversy of Arogya Setu when it was happening, we devised a very little app of ourselves. We have an app for employees, which gives a lot of services. So we just embedded and plugged in a little thing where we just ask 5 questions and let them come into office on, things that are required. So we didn't want to get into that controversy. That was my advice. Let's just stay away. Let's just take employee consent and, get them to give information as a result.
No, thank you so much. Let me switch gears to Sanjukta now. And Sanjukta, you earlier alluded to a lot of challenges that IT companies faced because of, again, the data privacy area is one. but you also alluded to the entire area of insurance and claims management that the IT companies have been facing in recent times, right? So I think it is coupled with the COVID and the pandemic that has been there. But also, I'm very excited to hear more from you of the case that you mentioned of Singapore. So over to you.
Thanks, thanks, Anubhav. I just put together, a few slides. I am not able to share my screen. I had shared that with you. Is it possible for you to share the screen?
Yeah, sure. Give me a minute. Why don't you start while I project the...
Yeah, I think I managed to share.
Okay, good. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah. So So I just wanted to, and this is specifically right in the case of Singapore, because I feel we as IT service providers operate from multiple jurisdictions, and there's a lot of focus. Most of the data privacy compliance regimes are focused towards GDPR, but sometimes we could overlook what the data privacy laws that are there in some of the other countries. And I think Singapore's PDPA is well established. Their PDPC is very, very effective. And so I thought, let me present a case study, which happened during the pandemic, and perhaps some elements of this could have been avoided, but for the pandemic. It's a quick thing in terms of, obviously the PDPA regulates collection, use, transfer, disclosure, storage of personal data, gives rights to users and places a responsibility on, organizations. And there is a need, for compliance. So, I mean, because as IT service providers, we have to be mindful of multiple data privacy regulations. There is a need not only to develop a robust framework. It's not enough to get, consultants who will come up and say, we are going to go through, scan all the, departments which handle personal data, will give you, all kinds of consent forms and other things. But at the core of it is all of that, all the framework that you have, is it getting percolated? Are you training individuals, not just all individuals, but everybody who joins the company? Because a lot of work is handled by somebody who's completely fresh, perhaps from college. We don't know. People think that, this is a routine task, sending an email. Can an HR employee send an email to everybody, all the shortlisted candidates, and say, can you come and can you fill this form? Can you go into this link and put all your data? It's routine tasks such as this perhaps are given to somebody who is coming straight out of college, and they are doing that. But are they trained enough? Do they understand the sensitivity around data privacy regimes? And that's something that we need to put focus on. And also there's a very, very high visibility and constant scrutiny on Indian IT companies and compliance, whether it is you take class action, immigration related areas, and we know the recent cases that we are seeing, which is highly publicized. So all of this put together, I think we need to have a very good regime, constant monitoring and constant communication. So here is a quick case study. I just have a couple of slides. It shouldn't take much time. So an HR employee, let's say A, of company CB, sent an email to shortlisted personnel candidates, asking them to fill onboarding forms via a link. Right? It seems very innocuous, routine task. Close on the heels of that incident, again, the employee A, says, please take it in the context of a pandemic situation where people are not in office in the normal course, because all these employees are getting onboarded to a certain client project, and the client requires a very detailed kind of induction form which needs to be filled. In the normal course, these candidates would have been called to office, and then somebody would have walk them through as to how they have to fill those particular, what data should go in where, how are they supposed to fill the form. In order to ease this whole process, the employee A sends a filled out form as a template to all the candidates. Again, you would think it's routine. What is the issue in this? And suddenly the company receives, let's say call the company CB, receives a notice from the commission saying, explain yourself. We have received a complaint from an individual saying that their personal data has been compromised. You look at these two scenarios and you wonder what is in it that, that causes this data breach or personal data privacy compromise. Number one, the employee who sent that email put personal email IDs of everybody, let's say 30, 40, whoever, in the 2 column and not in the BCC. Just because and the complaint was received by one of the individuals who saw whose personal email ID was there, who was a shortlisted candidate, but they went and complained, and the same individual asked for, how do we fill the form, that particular individual. And when this form was sent out, a form of an existing employee of some years back, that employee would have joined, and that form contained personal data, let's say, name or, some sort of an identification number, passport number, and things like that in that form was sent out. So 2 issues. It's not just the person, and the person whose data was shared was not the complainant, but the complainant was the individual who received this data, which normally we wouldn't expect, right? Somebody who's received this data, you're not expecting that individual. And just because his email ID is there in the 2 column, and then there are a few others in the 2 column, that individual goes and complains. And then we, have to look at, how do we deal with this issue? In a normal course, people are coming to office. Here, you're trying to do everything offline, trying to, get things moving really, really quickly in this scenario. So most important is the training. So when you receive such a notice, how do you respond to that notice? Will you tell the commissioner that, okay, this was a one-off incident? Yes, we have investigated this incident. It was an inadvertently, instead of putting everybody in the BCC, the email IDs were mentioned in the 2 column. We have not received, any complaint from anybody. Yes, but we acknowledge this fact. And we have gone and, told the employee whose data was shared, instead of masking, without any masking to this, we have told that individual, got a consent from that individual, even if it is post facto. And we have told the individual who has received this data to delete the email. Is that enough for us to, satisfy the commission and ensure that, there are no penalties or strictures passed? This, I believe, is not enough. You need to, and as a company, what the company CB did was to go, I think one of the most important thing is to have legal, but I know most of the large IT companies have a separate data privacy team, but what I have noticed is that, in times of crisis, right? In times when these are the situations, I think there is no better, person or team to deal with it than the legal team. They need to take the lead. They will know how to, answer, the nuances of how do you answer, where is the risk in terms of how you answer that question. I think the legal team should take the lead, send an email. And here is where, what was done was all the employees, we studied 5-year data. How often has this happened that, some templates and information in that templates, how often was this shared, went back to all those individuals, to be transparent, share all these incidents, even though the PDPC has not asked. So tell them about the incident, tell them the compliance regime that you have, tell them all the training that has been done, find out whether that individual who has, sent these emails and these templates, whether they have been trained or not. If they are not trained, tell the commission that we have trained them. And apart from this, we would like to also tell you that in the past 5 years or whatever, these are the incidents that have happened, and this is what we have done in terms of proactive communication, getting acknowledgements from everybody who has received, and and that is how we have been able to contain this issue. This kind of a communication helped legal taking the lead, because it is HR, it is data privacy, it is the delivery teams, all of these people have to provide information. It can easily slip if you don't have somebody taking that responsibility and being able to communicate well on time. The other quick, some takeaways I would like to say, that it's very, very important to have, to look at your insurance, have a legal spock within the insurance team, have a legal spock who understands your insurance policies, understands, that creates a certain template, passes this template with all the standard questions that are asked, gives that template to all the legal team members. The legal team members communicate to key delivery managers, to account and sales teams, communications teams, and HR, that anytime there is a potential threat of breach, data privacy breach or otherwise, you please communicate to us. Legal will be able to help mitigate the risk, and then fill up that information and then share it with the legal insurance spock, who will communicate proactively to the insurer. Also very, very important in terms of this whole landscape of insurance is to check with your insurer in advance. Don't wait, don't be reactive. Check with the insurer in advance, which are the law firms for each jurisdiction and by subject matter. Who are they? Is there a conflict in engaging them? Engage with those law firms which are insurer prescribed law firms, and see whether there is a meeting of minds and you can really engage with them. If it is good, sign engagement letters in advance, maintain a full repository jurisdiction wise, share that repository with, on your legal cloud, so that whenever there are these incidents, sometimes like Murphy's Law, right? Most of these things, let me tell you, and I think everybody on the panel would agree, that most of these things happen, at peak Christmas, on Diwali day, or some such thing, when you have gone off to, attend a wedding or something. And that is exactly, it's there. This incident is waiting for such a situation to happen. So it's very important. And really, in some of the legal teams, and I've worked in a number of companies, there is some sort of a, oh, we need to keep this secret. We just need to have silos. Only this person will be able to handle, or this person. No, please share this information. There's nothing, complicated to maintain these detailed repositories. Share it over there. Everybody should know where they need to go. Don't keep that knowledge or this, okay, this is the most important, I am the most important. So these are some of the practical tips that I would give to be able to, because the insurer will come, you'll inform the insurer, but they will come and say, no, why did you use this law firm? I will only give, you can, I have a law firm which charges $350 per hour, and you use, we know that's, we want to work with law firms. It's a reputation, it's a financial risk, and we may go to, law firms we are comfortable, but try to marry the two, maintain those repositories, and be able to handle. So quick sum up, what I would do is have insurer approved law firms ready, sign engagement, discuss with them, sign engagement letters, be transparent to your regulator, be very transparent, use your discretion. Obviously, I think that comes with experience. Use discretion in how that information is presented, and the timing of that information in response to that notice. Have a framework, in terms of how you deal with incidents, risk, and insurance and response. So I think there's a constant flow of communication at every step of the way, including before you settle, and they will ask, have you gone and committed settlement before you have come to us? So I think it's very, very important to follow this whole setup. That's it from me, Anubhav.
Thank you, Sanjukta. I think this was very insightful and very practical, right? So I think I was, while you were speaking, I was just thinking that it is not the complexity that matters. It's the practicality that is more important, right? We can still have a very good compliance framework and a regime within the corporates if we make it simple, we allow people to understand it better rather than have this iron curtain of ye to lawyer hi karega. so I think simplicity could be the key, and I think you gave very appropriate examples to show in your case studies that how I think one is proactiveness and second is just the sheer logic and simplicity of training and awareness, how that can change the entire internal landscape. And that is where the GCs play a very key role, because this is all based out of your experience and learnings over your practice in-house. Is there?
No, sorry, that was a phone vibrating.
Okay, so I think let's now move into the last channel, which is the cyber crime and the cyber security. I think just to give a background, like with the pandemic last year, we have depended more heavily on technology, right? And a deeper adoption of interconnected devices and hybrid work environments has only led to our more dependence on technology. And just to give you a figure, this renders like in the Indian, as per the Indian government data, there were 1.16 million cyber security cases that were reported in 2020. Right, and that is basically a 3x spike from the previous years, right? And the onset of 2021, the government websites itself witnessed a leaking of COVID-19 lab test results of thousands of Indian citizens, a cyber attack on systems of an airline data service provider. And I'm not naming, but I'm sure many of you have seen this because these all hit the headlines. In May 21, resulted in leaking of personal data of 4.5 million passengers of the airline. In the same month, there were personally identifiable information and test results of more than 190,000 candidates for a common admission test that was leaked and put up on sale. In April 21, million credit card records and details of 180 million pizza orders, their name, phone numbers were leaked in and their mail addresses were leaked. And these are all real numbers, right? And they're still fresh in our memories, right? And while these threats are emanating from the cyberspace and they are very well publicized at a national level, we still do not seem to have a strategy which lays out the guidelines on how to tackle them, right? And there is no formal essential framework to protect critical information infrastructure as well. And yeah, Army has its own and certain private organizations have their own, but there is not something which is commonly available, right? And the last time we saw the national cybersecurity policy was released by the government in 2013, which laid down several strategies to counter security threats from cyberspace. But in 8 years' time, when they were announced, we have seen very limited implementation taking place, and our country still remains a target of these attacks, right? And with that background, Shalini, what is your thought on this one? Is this a major gap, and what is that we should be doing to cover this, given the dependence that we are now having in the data space, and the Prime Minister is already wanting the country to become a data economy or a digital economy?
I think this is a loaded question, Anubhav, and loaded because fresh in my mind is US power lines hacked, US government negotiates with ransomware guys, and ransomware guys sign a treaty saying we will no longer, attack healthcare, infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. we are in a state sponsored cyber crime situation. And I work for a digital company. It's a reality for me every day. Now, we have a lot of agencies in India, by the way, and most of them go into the PMO. So there is the National Security Coordinator, there is the National Infrastructure Society, there is CERT, which is today the nodal agency, and multiple, there's MITI, which does cyber laws, and there are multiple regulators, financial data, your data, PII data, everything. I think the problem is that we at a grassroots level, and I think somebody made that point, people are giving their personal data easy. I want to ask the question, do you and I realize what our data means? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Giving my temperature to enter a mall or showing my Aadhaar, my vaccination status, it makes no difference to most people. Only some of us remain aware that my data is very important. It needs to be kept safe. Cyber security is not about putting up firewalls or having the latest antivirus system downloaded. It's an everyday learning, everyday global level learning, where you reach out to your counterparts across the globe to understand what are they facing and what are they learning. It's a evolving process where your machine is so smart that it learns every day how to save you better. At the end of the day, the regulator can only pass the rule. And the agencies are all taking, I think, to a point very well made, just fill up the form and send it in 6 hours that you were attacked. What after that? What are you doing to ensure that the perpetrator is punished? Your data after it's attacked will be up for sale. Can I go after him there? Can China, Russia, today I heard the US senators are actually taking positions against countries. Europe, Russia, China, we will not deal with you if you sponsor cyber ransomware attacks. That's what we need to do. We need to come together and save every economy from getting attacked or your and my data going away. Data is the new oil. And you have the framework, but it doesn't work because everybody is just busy getting the right information filled up and filed into a file. After that, it's a blank hole. Nothing really comes out of it. You and I will fend for ourselves and we'll figure out how to do, live for the next morning. So in my view, it needs teeth, it needs collaboration, and not just within India, it needs collaboration with more developed countries that really understand cyber crimes, and that intelligence needs to import itself into India.
Very, very well said, Shalini. I think a more focused approach towards cyber security, and I think the preparedness and the awareness could be a very big game changer for us. It could be a big differentiator. But thank you. We have run out of time now. We are on top of the hour and it's time to conclude. So thank you, everyone. Do we have any questions? We'll be more than happy to answer. Otherwise, we are ready to say goodbye. Do we have any questions? I didn't see any. So thank you all. This was a very interesting discussion, and I think a number of points were brought to the table. And for your time, thank you. Over to you back.
Thanks a lot. I mean, it wasn't easy to plan this, get everybody together, and thank you, for the efforts that you made in connecting and then coming up and planning the session. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone.